Hi, and welcome to the Diamond Report for Monday, May 22nd, 2017. This is your host, Doug Diamond. We are looking at Earthquake 3D, and right now we're focused in on the northern end of Japan, where a magnitude 6.4 quake has occurred. And if you've been watching the Diamond Report lately, you'll know that I've been talking about magnitude 6 earthquakes over the last 2 weeks, because 2 weeks ago today was when CERN started up again, and I won't get into that again at the moment, but just know that we do have another magnitude 6 that has happened, and I think that's about the 13th or so magnitude 6 or larger earthquake. I think there was 1.7 mixed in there as well since May 8th when CERN restarted. Anyway, so we've got that quake, and this one, this new Japan quake, is most likely a result of what I mentioned on last night's earthquake update, which was the deep magnitude 6 over here in the Philippines. So this pink one right here in the center of your screen will create quite a bit of pressure over the course of the next few days. Now this quake happened on the 20th, so that's now a couple days ago. But this new quake in Japan is likely a result of this deep quake, which will cause larger, shallower movement. Or, as I mentioned last night, it could break out into multiple smaller quakes, still 6.0, but smaller quakes, meaning with this deep quake, you could expect over the next 7 to 10 days a magnitude 7 or 8, because we're tacking on an extra magnitude here, 7 or 8 over the next 7 to 10 days in this area. And I also mentioned yesterday that we may start to see a swarm of 6s in place of a 7, because you could get 10 6s in place of a 7, and we've got one right there already. So that may or may not be what's going on, but it sure looks to me like that could have something to do with it for sure. That deep quake in the Philippines is definitely going to cause further movement, and sometimes we've found that the deep quakes it takes a little bit longer than 7 to 10 days, but we'll stick to the 7 or 10 days and just kind of see what happens. We've also seen quite a bit of movement in Mexico lately with 5s, 4s, and so forth. Probably won't really get into that too much tonight because we've got a lot of headlines to cover. But anyway, this is kind of what the picture of the earthquake movement looks like over the last 48 hours. And let's go ahead and move on to the headlines. The bar manager says the cops never talked with staff about the night Seth Rich was murdered. Statement backs the claim from private investigator that police were told to stand down. It's on WND. Dubai's first RoboCop begins patrolling streets. The autonomous RoboCop entered the line of duty on Sunday. I mean, what could possibly go wrong, right? Charlie Daniels says we need 1,000 Paul Reveres because we aren't going to allow the radical left to steal our country from us. If America is going to survive, it is time for this generation of Americans to take a stand. That's from Michael Snyder of End of the American Dream. I couldn't agree more. Republicans facing violence, death threats from left-wing activists. Some anti-Trump activists are disrupting events and even resorting to threats and acts of violence. Well, that's what they do, because they're a bunch of cry-bullies, many of them. The U.S. allots $200,000 in Europe to promote, quote, positive narratives about refugees. The grant aims to use digital platforms to help integrate immigrants and counter violent extremism. I'm sure it does. That's on the Daily Caller. Parisian women face constant harassment by migrants. Over the past year or so, the district has become a no-go area for women. That's on Breitbart. Leaked Facebook docs reveal self-harm content allowed by network's moderators. Social network does not censor self-mutilation live streaming. Isn't that nice? It's on RT. Obama speaks on global warming, then spews CO2 with private jet and 13-car motorcade. Hypocrisy of radical environmentalists knows no bounds. I bet he didn't have a word to say about geoengineering, which is the real threat of, and also the real cause of, global warming and climate change. Sweden, migrants responsible for 90% of shootings. Government responds by putting people who talk about the problem on a hate list. Because what else would they do? I mean, that makes total sense, right? Walter Williams says campus atmosphere a mix of infantilism, kindergarten, and totalitarianism. And I just mentioned the word cry bullies a little bit ago. Time for donors and lawmakers to stop funding campus tyranny. America's cities are running out of room. Agenda 21 rollout continues as planned. Yes, it is. It's actually called Agenda 2030 now. Defeating the deep state coup d'etat. Step 2. Stop the mainstream media. Scientists have found a way to photograph people through walls using Wi-Fi. It can basically scan a room with someone's Wi-Fi transmission. Yeah, I saw some posts about this earlier today. Apparently they're 3D methods of doing that. Will the Trump administration overdose on authoritarianism? The war on drugs is a war on the Constitution as well. Trump touched a glowing orb in Saudi Arabia and everyone has gone insane. Is this a sign that the New World Order is about to begin under Trump's reign? I mean, it could be, but if you watch the report that Alex Jones did on the glowing orb, there's a lot more to it than that. I mean, it is occultic in symbolism, but there's more to it. It has to do with an NSA threat center, like a fusion center, that is at the heart of where Trump is visiting. Victory for Veterans March Across America. Organization raises awareness about issues veterans have to deal with. Globalists to crash the stock market and end nationalism. And Trump. Globalist magazine urges White House staff to abandon Trump. It's official. InfoWars receives White House press credentials. Alternative media has the establishment running scared. I think that's really good news. Video, did Trump bow to the Saudi king? Debate over the optics of Trump's recent meeting with the Salman of Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia and Israel, the real foreign forces behind American elections? The globalists know who really influences American politics. Podesta largely blames the Clinton campaign, not WikiLeaks or the Russians, for losing the election. Donald Trump signs massive arms deal with Saudi Arabia. I commented on this yesterday. I think that's totally insane. NBA player calls Turkey's President Erdogan the Hitler of our century. The self-appointed dictator is imprisoning journalists at an alarming rate. Michael Flynn pleads the fifth. Top general will not participate in the ongoing Russian probe. Video, Daniel Estulin's Bilderberg the movie trailer. New film exposes the elite Bilderberg group. It's probably about time we've seen a Bilderberg movie come out. Congressman race baits America to push Trump impeachment. Democrats cry for impeachment without a shred of evidence for support. Well, that doesn't stop them. And remember, it's the same people who were crying foul in the 90s when Bill Clinton was impeached. And don't forget that. He was impeached by the House. Europe was the birthplace of mankind, not Africa, scientists find. I don't know if I buy that. Deep State is committing the real impeachable offense. Even many left-leaning politicians have come out against the ongoing coup. California Senate passes bill banning drug company gifts to doctors. California doctors receive $1.4 billion in gifts each year. It might affect some of them's golf games, but hopefully it will help a few people if they're not getting these gifts. Although most of the doctors, unfortunately, are highly educated, which means they're highly brainwashed into believing that drugs are the only way to have health, and drugs have nothing to do with health. Did a common anti-anxiety drug play into Soundgarden rocker's death? His family says he wouldn't have intentionally taken his life. If you care about privacy, you should change your Twitter settings right now. The new policy includes changes to data collection, data sharing, and digital advertising. Yeah, I saw that on my Twitter account just today or yesterday. Desperate parents pull children out of school over fears of MS-13 gang. DHS secretary extends temporary protected status for nearly 60,000 Haitians by 6 months. Facebook won't say if they'll use your brain activity for advertisements. That's on The Intercept. Sounds like Facebook might be using a D-Wave computer now. Groups sue the FDA or the Fraud and Death Administration over food additive rule. That's from The Hill. District of criminals terrified of facing their lawlessness. Washington elite are nervous they could be held responsible for once. That's a John Bound report. I don't think that's actually going to happen, but it's good that they're at least nervous. Insurers request double-digit premium rate increases for Obamacare plans next year. Saudi Arabia, candidate Trump versus President Trump. A look into Trump's changing rhetoric on Saudi Arabia. And it has definitely changed. Roger Stone dissects the Washington double standard on Susan Rice and Michael Flynn. Undercover video exposes deep contradiction at the heart of Planned Parenthood. Contrary to popular belief, Planned Parenthood offers little else in medical services beyond abortion. Well, it's all a facade. I mean, abortion is the main gig that they have. That's the main reason they exist. They come up with these other so-called services in order to cover for doing all of the millions of abortions. Alex Jones responds to White House press secretary pass controversy. Mainstream media throws a fit over independent media gaining White House access. Well, that's the way it should be. Exclusive, Trump's Saudi orb is a real crystal ball. Wall-to-wall coverage devoted to mysterious orb in Saudi Arabia. Alex has a really good explanation of what's going on with that and how it's a control mechanism for an NSA fusion center. It's not really strictly an occult, like symbolic type of thing. I mean, it may be that as well. But definitely check out this article and the video that Alex put together on that. InfoWars Nightly News: explosion at Ariana Grande concert. As many as 19 dead after suspected suicide bomber enters concerts. I think we found out that that was a nail bomb that exploded. Mainstream media melts down over InfoWars White House credentials. And again, terror attack kills 19, injures 50 at UK concert. Terror strikes Manchester as suspected suicide bomber detonates at arena. And ISIS and all the crazy wackos out there who are just doing Islam as it was intended have all said that the UK was going to be their next target. And apparently they're holding to their promises on that. Shocking admission from New York bankruptcy judge. Chapter 11 and 15 filings have exploded. That's on Zero Hedge. The tens of millions of forgotten Americans that the U.S. economy has left behind. That's by Michael Snyder of the Economic Collapse blog. Russian hackers infected 1 million bank customer smartphones. That's on Zero Hedge. Greek authorities to launch mass confiscation of safe deposit boxes, securities, and homes in tax evasion crackdown. Seth Rich plot thickens. DC insider speaks of complete panic at highest levels of the DNC. Why the left refuses to talk about Venezuela. That's on Zero Hedge. Trump's budget will slash $1.7 trillion in entitlements and cut food stamps by 25%. Of course, that will make Trump even more popular than he already is. Trump becomes first sitting U.S. president to visit Jerusalem's Western Wall as he and Jared stop to pray at Judaism's holiest site. Israel and U.S. talk tough about Iran as Trump says Arab nations now have common cause with Jews, and Israel's president warns of nuclear nightmare. China's state-run media declares reports that the government killed CIA sources as a sweeping victory. Alex Jones also talks about that headline as far as the Chinese and the dead CIA assets and how basically the Chinese have been given full access to our CIA and to much of our intelligence. World War III fears as Russia reactivates satellites that could be adapted to put explosives on. North Korea behind NHS and FedEx ransomware cyber attack, defectors say. Kim Jong-un threatens to mass-produce missiles capable of striking U.S. military bases after watching his latest test launch, and even throws some gang signs with his troops. This is from a guy who thinks Dennis Rodman is really cool. America's own Arab Spring, the dire threats of getting rid of the Donald. Twitter on McCain, butthurt, Russia-obsessed senator has lost his mind. I don't think he's had his mind for some time. U.S. and EU meddle in other countries and kill people under the guise of human rights concerns, according to Duterte, and he's right. That's on RT. Watch, your child belongs to the state. Lawmakers claim the state owns your children. That's on the Free Thought Project. Former Speaker of the House says Seth Rich was assassinated as WikiLeaks source. I think that's obvious to anyone who's paying attention. And I will also state yet again that it had to be the Clinton campaign. Hillary and her team, whether or not she knew about it, I don't know, but it was definitely connected to Hillary, Podesta, and the whole election team. Rhode Island introduces Geoengineering Act to ban chemtrails. It's good news. You can also find out more about that on geoengineeringwatch.org. The World Health Organization suspects a fourth person died of Ebola in Congo. Measles outbreaks caused by suppressed immune systems, not anti-vaxxers. Finds intriguing air pollution study. It's on Natural News. Mississippi legislator says people who take down Confederate statues should be lynched in Facebook post decrying the heinous and horrific destruction of American history. Saudi Arabia to cut off oil supply to create shortage in desperate bid to raise prices. That's on the Express. Joys of socialism. Venezuelan general orders sniper fire on starving protesters. That's on the Gateway Pundit. Trump saves Obamacare again for now. It's on Zero Hedge. Comey investigated the Clintons 4 times. Let them off each time while he and his family benefited from Clinton-related work. That's on the Gateway Pundit. I think we all know how slimy Comey is. Widow of 9/11 victim to Trump. Saudis should be held accountable for role in murdering 3,000. That's on RT. Secret dossier on UFO sightings in Britain to be released after the election. It's on RT. Inching closer to disclosure. Texas fast-tracks transgender bathroom bill to force school children to use the restroom according to the gender of their birth. Neil deGrasse Tyson demands science totalitarianism across America. Says anyone who disagrees with him is automatically anti-science. Because, of course, he has cornered the market on all science, apparently. He goes right along with Bill Nye, the fake science guy. That's on Natural News. CDC pushing scare stories about raw milk, but won't dare talk about the health risks of mercury in vaccines. Also on Natural News. You know, Richard Sachs, the host of Lost Arts Radio that I produce and engineer, is an avid raw milk person, and he believes very strongly that that is one of the reasons he's able to be a vegan. He's a vegan plus raw milk, which of course makes him an outcast in the vegan community because they don't believe that milk should ever be drank in any sort of way at all. But what they don't know is that how the milk that you go buy at the grocery store, how dirty it is, how filthy it is. And so they're right about that milk, but they're wrong about raw milk. So anyway, if you want to hear more about raw milk, definitely check out Lost Arts Radio. Richard talks about it all the time. LostArtsRadio.com. The dawn of the nuclear destruction age. Know what you're up against and how to use a nuclear fallout map. That's on Survival Dan 101. You won't believe why Washington State isn't allowed to prepare for nuclear war. Clint Eastwood warns political correctness is killing our country. We've lost our sense of humor. That we have. That's on Breitbart. Neo-Nazi converts to Islam, then shoots neo-Nazi roommates for disrespecting Islam. That's on the Gateway Pundit. Zuckerberg's Open Borders Group enforcing immigration law hurts public safety. That's on Breitbart. High fructose corn syrup has been quietly, deceitfully renamed. I think it's been renamed more than once. Ron Paul warns Iran is in the crosshairs. Neocons are still writing the script. It's on Zero Hedge. Spain in crisis as Catalonia says it will declare independence without referendum. ISIS performed chemical weapons tests on human guinea pigs. Notre Dame valedictorian commencement speech, quote, "Our generation must stand against scapegoating Muslims," end quote. It's on freedomoutpost.com. Obviously that person has no idea how Islam actually works. Confirmed Putin's election hacking was about hurting Clinton, not helping Trump. Art of the deal, Trump to test waters for Middle East peace. That's on Breitbart. Emergency at U.S. nuke site. Unusually high radiation levels reported. A worker says everybody's freaked, shocked, and surprised. The governor says alarming incident. The TV says major event, sign the plant is falling apart. Deep state using food as a weapon against Americans. It's an interview with Dave Hodges and Daniel Brigman. I am so sorry. Broken Ariana Grande sends emotional tweet after 19 are killed in terrorist attack at her UK concert. The blood, the sound, the body parts, it will never leave my mind. Witnesses tell of horrific scenes at Manchester Arena terrorist attack. And of course that was from The Religion of Peace. Suicide bomber strikes at Manchester Arena. 19 people were killed and 50 injured in terrorist attacks as nail bomb near the exit explodes, ripping into teens, leaving packed Ariana Grande gig. And here's more on the CIA and China. Killing CIA informants. China crippled U.S. spying operations. That's on the New York Times. Again, China has been given full access to our intelligence systems, including the CIA. They're completely compromised. So if people in the CIA are wondering why Chinese know their every move, it's because of that. The D.C. surgeon who operated on Seth Rich says the DNC staffer was alive and well after surgery before a group of LEOs showed up in the ICU. DNC staffers plug pulled in ICU, question mark. That's on IntelliHub. We are moving quickly to Revelation chapter 13, which talks of a global government and a one-world economic system along with a mark of the beast. That's on Survival Online 101. If that's the case, then the actual Antichrist will be on the scene at some point relatively soon. And for more on that, I think we could look a little closer at the events happening on September 23rd this year, as foretold in the Bible. Lifeguards clear the waters off San Clemente after spotting 25 sharks, likely great whites, near the shore. Steve says the Pacific Island food chain is dead and dying thanks to Fukushima. These sharks are hungry, getting positioned for earthquake, question mark. I don't know about the earthquake thing. He's mentioned that before. I'm not sure I'm in agreement with that. But they're definitely hungry because the food chain is collapsing from the bottom up. From the plankton all the way up the food chain to the sharks and killer whales and the rest of the critters in the sea. Why Melbourne is in the grip of a mouse plague. They warned the wet spring and bumper harvest created the perfect breeding conditions for the mice to reach plague proportions. That's on HeraldSun.com. World leaders gather in Beijing while the U.S. sinks into irrelevancy. After years of planning, California is likely to roll out its earthquake warning system next year. And my guess is it probably won't work. Critical must read. Seth Rich's cousin. He knew something. Cryptic tweet deleted as Dem crisis communications agent melts down on Twitter over DNC staffer's murder exposure. That's on All News Pipeline. And here's the one I mentioned earlier. Scientists have found a way to photograph people in 3D through walls using Wi-Fi. Steve says they can also tune into individuals' DNA and their unique subharmonic signals. Each color also affects our physiology. That's on BusinessInsider.com. You know, I was told some of that information about the DNA and being able to be tracked. I was told about that in the dream, quote unquote, that I had exactly 1 month before my near fatal car accident last year. I was actually told some of that information. Individuals and their unique DNA can be tracked. That's what I was told. Bombshell, Donna Brazile warned off private eye on Seth Rich murder. Ex-DNC chairwoman reportedly asked cops why investigator is, quote, snooping into mysterious case. That's on WND. It's because they were trying to cover it up. She may have even known something about it. Okay, that's all for today's Diamond Report. Thanks for listening and watching, and I will see you tomorrow.